opposition lawyers. I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is Miguna. He said his return to Kenya would start the mother of all liberation wars. But Miguna didn't even get past immigration. Instead, the self-described general of the national resistance movement says he was drugged, beaten and forced onto a plane to Dubai. It's the second time he's been deported. The government says he's trying to disrupt reconciliation talks between President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga. But the courts say the deportation was illegal. Judges fined both the Interior Minister and the head of police for contempt of court. But is there a bigger game being played here between the government and the judiciary? I'll ask that question to Miguna himself when he joins us on the program in just a moment. But first, this report by Christine Provalakis.
Out of a multitude of probably 1 million people that were at Uhuru Park on the 30th of January, the only person they abducted at night and detained in Comunicado for 1 week before forcefully removing from the country is me. They know that I mean action.
On his return to Kenya, controversial opposition figure Miguna pledged to lead a revolution. Instead, he was drugged, assaulted and deported for a second time in 2 months.
They have just been detaining me in Comunicado illegally with my lawyers.
What are the reasons or concerns?
There is no reason. They have not gotten authority from whoever for me to get into the country. But I don't need authority. The Constitution says a Kenyan citizen has a right to come in and leave as he or she wishes. And that's what I'm doing.
Miguna was put on a flight to Dubai after saying he'd been held against his will at Nairobi airport for 2 days last week on his attempted return to Kenya.
So I'm not going to Dubai. Let them kill me. That's fine. Let them kill me. That's what they want. Let them go ahead and do it.
He was deported after judges fined 3 senior officials for contempt of court for failing to release him. Kenyan officials say Miguna, who also holds a Canadian passport, is no longer a citizen. It's not the first time Miguna has been forced out of the country. He was first deported in February after being charged with treason. A court then reversed the ruling and ordered authorities to allow Miguna's return, which he tried but was prevented from doing. Miguna's troubles began earlier this year after Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn in as Kenya's president.
That I will be faithful.
Kenyatta's victory in a rerun vote last year set off protests that killed dozens of people and divided the country.
What we had on October 26th was not an election. It was not credible. It was not transparent.
After disputing the election result, opposition leader Raila Odinga decided to hold his own rival inauguration, declaring himself the rightful leader. He needed someone to officiate the ceremony, and that task fell to Miguna, because he was a lawyer for the opposition coalition NASA. Miguna swore Odinga in front of thousands of supporters, but it came at a cost. He was arrested, charged with treason, and then deported.
Miguna has done entirely nothing. He has done nothing entirely, Kabisa. Because if at all they were to charge Miguna, it's Raila to be charged. Why are they fearing Raila? Because Miguna was just there just to help Raila in taking the oath.
Now Miguna is planning his return once again to lead a campaign against Kenyatta. But with Kenyatta and Odinga agreeing to work towards bringing peace to the country, where does that leave Miguna? Christine Provalakis, The Newsmakers.
Well, we're joined now from Toronto by Miguna, the self-described general of Kenya's National Resistance Movement, or NRM. Miguna, good to have you on the Newsmakers again. For those looking at the situation from the outside, they say, or they'll see, a semblance of reconciliation happening between Uhuru and Raila. It seems as if everybody else is moving on without you. Is that how it is?
No, no, no. You are completely wrong. First of all, the NRM has now rebranded itself into National Revolutionary Movement, not National Resistance Movement. And no, you are wrong. Two people meeting and having a handshake and having a secret deal that is only known to themselves does not bind or do not bind 45 million Kenyans who are still suffering under the yoke of tyranny of the Jubilee government and rapacious corruption of the elite of Kenyans. The unemployment situation has not changed. The social rights situation has not changed. The human rights violations that is exemplified by my brutal treatment just a few days ago has not changed. I was not just abducted, assaulted, and dragged and transported unconscious to Dubai. I was brutalized at the airport in the full glare of the media. The media that was recording it live was tear-gassed, clubbed on, brutalized, and chased away. So the country has not moved on. The country will not move on because two people have cynically signed their agreement in secrecy, agreement whose terms we don't know.
Okay, so with that in mind, do you believe that Raila no longer has the mandate of the opposition because you believe he's struck a deal with the devil?
Well, I think you are aware that there is nothing called the opposition as such in Kenya today because NASA is completely divided. The so-called three principles, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi, and Moses Wetangula, are not reading from the same script as Raila Odinga. So there is nothing called NASA as we speak. And therefore, once the leader of the so-called opposition goes into bed with tyrants who have stolen an election and killed more than 400 people and are continuing to brutalize Kenyans, you can't speak of an opposition. The opposition is by the patriotic Kenyans who are opposing this slide back into tyranny and authoritarian rule.
I don't know who gave the order, but do you suspect that it came from the very top to keep you out of the country and to treat you badly by kicking you out of the country?
Yes, this order could only have come from the president himself, and I suspect even those that he has entered into deals with. The reason why I say this is it's not easy for a cabinet minister or a bureaucrat to disobey not just one court order, but 11 court orders. These 11 court orders not only say that I should be released forthwith and that the decision to declare me a non-Kenyan was quashed, the decision to take my passport was quashed, the order was given that I should get a valid passport and by return to Kenya be unconditional, and that I return as a Kenyan-born citizen and not be subjected to the kind of conditions that they were trying to impose on me on March 26th. What they were trying to do was to make me return to Kenya as a foreigner, as a Canadian, so that I could not continue to lead the NRM, so that I could not participate in political activities, so that I could not earn a living, so that I could not live a free life, and they could decide to return me or remove me or detain me anytime they wanted. In fact, Justice Odonga on March 28th not only convicted the people that subjected me to this kind of barbaric treatment and sentenced them by fining them 200,000 Kenya shillings each, he also said I should not be removed from the jurisdiction of the court, which is the Republic of Kenya. And they removed me. The argument was that where they kept me was not in Kenya. But the police officers, the security agents that were keeping me there, that brutalized me, that dragged me and sedated me, were Kenyans. Mm-hmm. So how do you argue that these people are from Jupiter when I was in the Kenyan soil and being kept captive by Kenyan security forces. It's absurd.
For whatever reasons they might have, whether it's the technical legal reason by saying that you acquired your Canadian citizenship before 2010 and therefore you somehow gave up your Kenyan citizenship, or if it's for political reasons, whatever the case may be, they're trying to keep you out of the country. As things stand, are you going to continue to try to get back into the country and risk a repeat of this happening again?
That is a very good question. Today is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. What did Martin Luther King stand for? He represented a struggle, civil rights struggle against oppression. He did not give up. He gave his life for it. Nelson Mandela went to jail for 27 years for the same thing. Václav Havel of the Czech Republic went to jail for 5 years for it. Many people have gone through the same experiences. History underlines this fact. No matter what the oppressors do, no matter how brutal they are, eventually they lose. And in this case, they will lose. The fact is, 10 court orders have said that they are wrong and I'm right. So it's not a question of technicality. Courts of law have ruled in my favor. I will continue on the course for liberation of Kenya. And eventually Kenyans will throw away the shackles of dictatorship. And these people will go down in history as nothing but a shameful experience of the indignity that we've gone through as Kenyans. We will win. I have no doubt about that.
Okay. Miguna. It's been good to talk to you again on the Newsmakers. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, let's get the view from Kenya now. Joining me from Nairobi is Farah Maalim. He's Kenya's former Deputy Speaker of Parliament. Also in Nairobi is Andrew Franklin. He's a lawyer and a security analyst. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on the Newsmakers. Andrew Franklin, let me begin with you. Is Miguna the persecuted revolutionary that he claims to be?
Miguna is an actual patriot who has been mistreated since the 2nd of February 2018, from when he was dragged away from his home in Rwanda and eventually deported. He is, in fact, a radical. His treatment has exposed the reality of Kenya's legal system, its security infrastructure, and the failure to implement the 2010 Constitution. He is not fronting for the opposition. He is not fronting for anyone. In fact, in many ways, he has now self-actualized. He is in many ways a Samson who's bringing down the temple.
Is he a Samson who's bringing down the temple, Farah Maalim? Big claim.
Well, Miguna has been in active radical politics from his student days. You have to understand this man is somebody who had to leave, to run away from his own country because he was going to be detained as a young student in the University of Nairobi many years back. So he has maintained what I would call those radical views, and is a patriot, exactly as my friend says. And he is indeed, yes, he is hell-bent on seeing to it that there are changes in this country. There's no doubt about that. And he is not a politician in the sense of the name politician, because politicians in Kenya for many years have doubled up both as being businessmen as well as politicians. But Miguna is somebody who was prepared to give up everything he had in Canada to come and fight for nothing here without expecting anything in return. So you could safely say he's a revolutionary, except he's not into any armed, or violent efforts to overthrow a state.
Andrew, he claims that this is a secret deal between elites when he looks at Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta shaking hands at Harambee House. Everybody else sees it as politics of engagement and taking the sting out of potential chaos in the country. He sees it as some sort of double dealing by the elites, ignoring the masses. I mean, isn't that a hyper-cynical view? Because these guys are coming together and trying to unite the country, aren't they?
It was a ceasefire that reflected the reality that Raila and NASA or Raila and ODM saw that mass action, demonstrations, more boycotts, stayaways, and the like would push the security forces over the edge. U.S. intelligence reports have indicated that Kenya is facing an existential crisis in 2018, a revolution being led by Raila Odinga. I have no partisan interest in this whole conflict. I've been in this country since 1981, but I can tell you that our security forces during the elections were overstretched. And many of their weaknesses and vulnerabilities were demonstrated in how they were dealing with demonstrations and problems in slum areas and the like. The economy had gone into a complete stall, and had the mass action, the demonstrations and the like been implemented by Raila, ODM, NASA, the country could have easily fallen over the edge. The ceasefire put a stop to that. 30 days after the ceasefire, we have seen nothing coming out about what's going to be discussed between the principals, that is Raila and the president. As a result, the Miguna affair has just essentially, I believe, killed the golden handshake. It's made it almost impossible to recover the ceasefire. After 36 years in this country, being intimately involved with the IEBC and others, I'm concerned about what's happening now.
Right. So, Farah, how close are we then to trouble returning to the streets?
Well, look, this is not the first time that we had disputed or contested elections and followed by a cycle of violence in the country, and more or less went to the precipice. We went to the edge, almost falling over. It's not the first time. We had it in 2007, 2008. We had it in 92. We had it in 97. Other than 2002, every election we had a powerful contestation between the contestants on both sides because of election rigging. So what has happened is that in every case there would be this political class in the opposition which would champion the people's cause, who would have a powerful section of the society rallying behind them. And then finally it's going to come to some kind of a deal between the elite, and handshaking is exactly what has happened now. And progressively the cause itself loses, and loses big time. And then you have to start all over again. Ordinarily, if indeed the contestations could bear fruits into meaningful reforms, we wouldn't have had this one cycle after the other, one cycle after the other. I don't think we're any better off today than we were in 1992, to be very honest with you. We have a new constitution, yes, but it's just in paper. The courts are giving orders, and nobody's implementing those orders. I mean, there is, and to the extent to which right now the courts have been threatened. So even that separation of power itself is lost. We have now the legislature itself is a voting machine. You have what's called a tyranny of numbers. So I don't see us indeed making such a powerful progress. Also, there is a powerful divide in the society. The gap between the rich and the poor is so enormous that if you call for a rally, an opposition rally on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, you probably get 1.5 million people coming out there. That tells you that these people are jobless. So there's a lot of problems. There's poverty, which is, but of course, on the other side, there are also the elite who are doing very well in terms of their own businesses and what you call tenderpreneurs. And the political class is the same political class, which keeps on cutting deals back and forth. So I think for the first time, you have somebody like Miguna, who is saying that I'm going to debunk all this hypocrisy and all this facade that has been there for many, many years, and call a spade a spade. Hello? So in a sense, he is different from what things used to be here in the past. It's not the first time that people are shaking hands. No, they did it many times before.
And gentlemen, I just want to do some housekeeping here. We did reach out to ruling party members, Jubilee members. They didn't want to appear on the Newsmakers this time around. They didn't want to talk to Miguna or about Miguna. Hopefully next time they'll appear on the Newsmakers again, because we have had really good, constructive discussions and debates with their representatives in the past. Andrew, to the point of the loss of separation of powers, Farah is saying there's a loss of separation of powers. We're seeing court orders being ignored by the government, and there seems to be a case of some judges versus the government. Is that true? And how much of a problem is that, in your opinion, Andrew?
I believe it's a tremendous problem. The judiciary has been under attack, not merely by Jubilee, but also at times by ODM, by the opposition, since late 2016, early 2017. But in fact, the failure by the government to actually implement or listen to court orders, whether it's to switch on television stations that were switched off, had nothing to do with Miguna. The fact is that there's been a continuing failure on the part of the executive to actually obey orders from the judiciary. Now, the judiciary has also been under physical attack. On October 24th, 2017, the Deputy Chief Justice's official car was subject to a firearms attack. Her driver, a police corporal, was severely wounded. And I believe the Deputy Chief Justice may have been in her car at that time. The Cabinet Secretary for Interior, who was on TV yesterday in front of Parliament, at that time said it was a normal robbery that occurs on late afternoon on Ngong Road, which is a very heavily trafficked highway. That was a direct attack on this number 2 in the Supreme Court of Kenya. The fact is that when the Supreme Court of Kenya correctly invalidated the election and gave its ruling on the 1st of September 2017, they came under huge amounts of attack from State House and everywhere else. They were out of control. They were out of control. Mm-hmm. So this has been essentially a dismantling of the third arm of government, which indicates again that the 2010 Constitution is not being implemented.
So with all of this in mind then, Farah, is the NRM, the former National Resistance Movement, now they call themselves the National Revolutionary Movement, are they a necessary nuisance to keep the government honest at this moment in time?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how much of like-minded people who reformists that Miguna would be in a position to attract, because let's face it, he's much as he's a very honest to the cause itself and the need to have a change in this country, but he's also a fairly an abrasive guy who would not hesitate to call people names, which is not quite what do you call a kind of a character you would need when you want to cobble some kind of a coalition together. But indeed, there is need for there to be a proper movement in this country that is going to address the grassroots problems of this country that has never been addressed since independence. And I think the earlier that kind of a thing can come together from genuine reformists who are not necessarily part of that powerful elite, which is propertied and which is very wealthy, I think that probably is going to create a national movement, because the elite itself are the ones who create the ethnicity and the divides and the regionalisms, and they come together again when they want. So they're never at war with one another, but the perception of there being a conflict between themselves has divided the country, validated them for so long, and given them a very long lease of life. So there is need for somebody to call that bluff, or a group of people to call that bluff, drawn from right across the country with all the different ethnic groups and all the regions, to fight for genuine reforms that is going to emancipate the ordinary people out in the streets, yes.
Okay, gentlemen.
So those are the kind of things, and I think...
yes, unfortunately...
Miguna has... yeah, okay.
Farah, I've got to wrap. I'm so sorry, and there's a bit of a time delay, so I apologize for jumping in there. Farah Maalim and Andrew Franklin, it's been great to talk to both of you. I hope you'll come on the program again in the not-too-distant future. Thanks for joining us. Still ahead on the Newsmakers, the subject of the world's most popular podcast may get a new murder trial after serving 8 years.